Okay, welcome everyone. This will be the meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton, New Jersey, October 10th, 2022. And just a reminder to folks, when you see us, thank you very much. Again, when you see us staring down at things, we're not trying to ignore you, but we have a monitor in front of us that has all kinds of information. We have an iPad that has information. We have paper. Anyway, it's just easier to keep track of stuff, to keep looking down. We don't mean to be rude. Okay, having said that, could we do the meeting statement, please?
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Leticia?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to, today being officially Indigenous Peoples Day, which Council some years back recognized it officially by resolution, I wanted today to read the land acknowledgement that has been in place on our agenda, but we haven't been reading it at each meeting. However, I wanted to do that today. And it reads, "We gather today on the land of the Lenni Lenape. As members of the Princeton community, we aspire to show appreciation, respect, and concern for all peoples and our environment. We honor the Lenape and other indigenous caretakers of these lands and waters, the elders who lived here before, the indigenous today, and the generations to come." Thank you.
Thank you. Dawn, can we have the roll call, please?
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Fraga?
Here?
Ms. Sachs?
Here.
Mr. Newland?
Here.
Mayor Frida?
Here. All right, if we could all rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance next.
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we have 5 sets of minutes to approve. Eve had mentioned to me that she wasn't here for the May 9th meeting, so if we could do the May 9th meeting by itself, and then, unless anyone has anything else concern about the other 4, we could do the other 4 in a block. So if someone would like to move Leticia, could you move the May 9th minutes, and is there a second? Okay. Mia's got the second. Any questions or comments on the minutes? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions?
I abstain.
Thank you. Okay, and again, if no one has any things to point out particularly about the other 4 sets of minutes, if someone would like to move them. Thanks, Eve. Or sorry, I'm trying to, another thing I'm doing when I'm looking down is on the screen in front of me, I can see the whole dais, so I can see the whole council, so I'm trying to catch as people's hands come up, and I just don't quite have the...
I'm seconding, but I know nobody has firsts.
I got that. Thank you. Okay, moved and seconded. No questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Announcements and reports. Council members first. Leticia?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of announcements. One is on behalf of the Health Department, who wants to let the community know that there are 2 community flu clinics that are being offered next week. One will be on Monday, October 17th. The Health Department and the Senior Resource Center are hosting a clinic at their Poor Farm Road location from 1 to 3 p.m. Appointments may be scheduled on the Senior Resource Center website. The other clinic will be on Tuesday, October 18th. The Health Department and La Mexicana on Witherspoon Street are offering a walk-in flu clinic from 5 to 7 p.m. All are welcome, and anyone that does not have insurance will have their shot provided for free. The other announcement is on behalf of the Human Services Department and Commission. On Saturday, October 29th, the Human Services Department and Commission will partner with the Princeton Public Library to host a Loteria community building event. This is a traditional Mexican bingo that we've hosted several years in the past and is very popular with our community. The event is open to everyone. Human Services is accepting donations from individuals as well as community partners who may wish to donate gift prizes that will be given away to the participants. If interested, please contact Ro Jones at the Human Services Department. Thank you.
Just a quick report on the Flood and Stormwater Commission. We had a very productive meeting last week. We adopted a set of goals and strategies for referral to the Planning Department for use in the public engagement process for the master plan. We approved a draft stormwater mitigation ordinance for referral to legal. That's something that we started working on 6 months or so ago. People may remember there was a proposed ordinance dealing with redevelopment, stormwater management, and that was put on hold while we tried to get this mitigation plan in place. So that's ready for the next step, and ultimately will come to council for consideration. And finally, we looked at a draft ordinance for floodplain management, and it's something that's already in our ordinance, but there are some changes being mandated by the state. So Jim Purcell has been working on the new draft, and that's not ready for prime time yet, but a lot of work going on in that committee.
Okay, thank you. Eve.
I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but piggybacking on what Councilman Cohen just said, there's a presentation at the library this Thursday, I think from 10 to noon, about how Princeton can combat flooding, given by Sophie Glovier from the Watershed, and I think there are other presenters as well, but it seems like a great program, so if you have a moment, please attend. Also library related, the Library Beyond Words benefit is this coming Saturday at Brick Farm in Hopewell, and there are still a few tickets left. So if you're interested in supporting the library and having a great evening, I hope you'll join us. I want to say a few words about something that has come up today. There is an article in the Daily Prince reporting on what has happened with cannabis since we had a report on the meeting that we had back in May. And then, of course, the students went home for the summer. So I was catching up with a reporter about that. And he wrote a piece about what happened with cannabis and interviewed some other people. There's a very unfortunate juxtaposition. I had a conversation with him about cannabis, and then on a completely separate note, with no intention to link the two, I encouraged him and the Daily Prince to help us get enough students to respond to a survey of student attitudes towards the town, what they would like to see, how they use the town, how they spend money, etc. And somehow those two items, cannabis and the survey, became linked. And I just want to state absolutely for the record that there was no intention to encourage students to say that they wanted a dispensary in their responses to the survey. And I've spoken with the reporter, and he said he would try to issue a clarifying statement. But there were a slew of unexpected emails on that topic today, so I just wanted to say that for the record, and also just if anybody ever has any questions about this, they could contact me directly rather than, notify people to contact the council based on information that is in fact inaccurate. So, thanks.
Thanks, Eve. Other council announcements or reports? Yeah, Leighton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to make a short announcement, and it actually might not end up being so short because there are 6 items I'd like to discuss and share with the public and those gathered here on Corner House, caring professionals who work on the prevention of drug and alcohol abuse. Number 1 is part of a Recovery Awareness Month. Executive Director David Erickson participated in the Mayor's Wellness Discussion Panel at the Princeton Public Library on the 21st of September, featuring the book, Why Don't You Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Number 2, Corner House is working with Mercer County and the Princeton Public Library to co-host in-person opioid awareness and Noxalon Narcan training for residents. Thanks to a grant from the Governor's Council on Alcohol and Drug Awareness, Sam Nelson of the outreach staff, who recently began work there, took 4 PHS students to the Lindsay Mayer Teen Institute in August. It was a formative experience for these young men, and they are eager to develop their ideas into programs for the benefit of their peers. Corner House relaunched this intensive outpatient clinical program with in-person groups running 3 evenings a week for the first time since March of 2020. That's a good thing. The weekly lunchtime chat group for Princeton Middle School girls has begun for this school year. Corner House is working with Princeton Middle School staff to start a similar group for middle school boys. And lastly, more than 70 juniors and seniors from Princeton High School, Princeton Day School, Stewart Country Day School, and the Hun School are developing workshops on drug awareness, peace and kindness, and anti-bullying for presentation to younger students, as well as substance-free social events for high school students. I would also like to not so much make an announcement, but give a really heartfelt statement and reference and acknowledge someone who I think we all know and was near and dear to all of us, and that's Mr. Daniel Harris on Indigenous Peoples Day. Daniel Harris passed away approximately 3 years ago, but he was a front runner and extremely instrumental in developing the resolution that Council President Letitia Fraga read from and referenced just a few minutes ago. And if you would indulge me, I'd like to share with you just a little bit more that really drills down deeply about Indigenous Peoples Day and what this means to each and every person who calls himself an American. Part and parcel, some of his major points were, and I'll be brief, the municipality of Princeton offers respect to the regional indigenous peoples in our area, the Lene Lenape around Ewing and Bridgeton to the south, who once occupied a huge territory stretching from Albany to the Delmarva Peninsula before their forced removal to Ohio, and elsewhere by Euro-Americans. The resolution also honors them for their practices of environmental sustainability, their holistic understanding of the world, and their cultural resilience throughout this nation's troubled history. And it acknowledges that colonists built Princeton itself on this small portion of the vast ancestral lands known as Lenni Pohawking. So I just want, wanted to take this minute and this moment to really bring forward the information and understanding that these really are not our lands. These lands belonged to the Native Indians, Native American Indians, and we have inherited these lands. And as you see through the statement, their push was for sustainability, holistic, cultural kindness, taking care of our land and the waters. And I think it's just a reminder that we should try to take better care of our land. And I also think it would be a good idea for this council and for Princeton and all of its boards and commissions to read this small statement to recognize and acknowledge the Native Americans at all of our meetings, and not just on an annual basis. Thank you.
If I may, and yes, we all are very grateful to Daniel Harris, who really was instrumental in doing the research that in turn resulted in the resolution that Council established recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. I also want to point out that several of our commissions, including Civil Rights and Human Services, have already taken the lead at every one of their meetings each month. They take turns, the members take turns reading the land acknowledgement. And I think that would be, we ourselves could do the same in honoring the Indigenous peoples that were here first.
Yes.
And if Council is on agreement of taking turns at each of our meetings to do the land acknowledgement.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Lynn. Any other council announcements or reports? Okay, let's go to public comments for items not on the agenda. So if you want to speak to anything that's on the agenda, you need to wait just a little bit longer. But if you have something to say that's not on the agenda, now's the good time. And Mr. Durkee, you were the first one to sign up, so come on up. I don't know if that microphone's turned on or not, Bob. You might have to check that.
Well,
Oh,
I
you're
think
good.
it is.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's nice to be back in once familiar setting. I want to make a suggestion to council, recognizing maybe you've already done something about this, and if so, that's great. But it follows very closely on the fact that this is Indigenous Peoples Day and what has just been said about the land acknowledgement. On all of the roadways coming into Princeton, there are signs that say, "Welcome to Princeton, settled in 1683." Well, Princeton was settled in 1683 by Europeans. But as you have just acknowledged, Princeton was settled long before that by the Lenni Lenape. It seems to me that consistent with the commitment you've all been expressing, it's time either to remove 1683 from that sign or to contextualize it and somehow explain that while, yes, Europeans came in 1683, this area had been settled long before that. So that's my suggestion.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that? I just want to say that the Civil Rights Commission is interested in doing, they already started doing research on that, and if council is interested in giving them the go-ahead, I'm sure they'd be happy to take it up.
Okay. Chip, you had signed up. Do you have comment for item not on the agenda, or are you waiting for Bank Street? Okay. All right. Is there anybody else in the audience here that has anything to say for items that are not on the agenda? Okay, thank you. And if there's anyone on Zoom that has a comment for something not on the agenda, if you could raise your hand. All right. Seeing no hands up, we'll close that part of the agenda. And we have two public hearings. The first one is on Ordinance 2022-33, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton establishing a residential parking district on Bank Street and amending the code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1964. So let's get a motion and a second, and then we can have discussion. Would someone, Leticia's got the motion, David's got the second. Thank you very much. Council comments, and then we'll go to public comments. David?
Yeah, I have just a couple of things that struck me as I was going through the final language on this. One, I just wanted to point out to council, my council colleagues, that the lottery that's been established for distributing the parking permits on Bank Street to residents, I think is cleverly done, because it's to be redone every year, and there's no um, ongoing right to a parking space for the winner of the lottery. And why I think that's good is that it really prevents the purchase of new automobiles that would not otherwise have been owned by these residents. Because, you know, if somebody feels like, oh, I can win the lottery and then I'll have that space for as long as I live here, they might go out and buy a car. But if they know that they may not have it again at the end of the year, I think it undercuts that motivation. So I wanted to praise that detail. And then I had a question for staff, which is there's a provision that if somebody moves or in some other way has to surrender their permit during the year, there's no explanation of what will happen. You know, will that just be an unused parking space for the rest of the year, or would there be a special lottery for the freed up permit? I don't know if anyone's given thought to that, but I think it could be an important point.
Mayor and Council, Jim Purcell, Assistant Municipal Engineer. The intent is that the space would be drawn as if in a lottery to be distributed to someone else that's on a wait list.
Okay, so I don't know if that specifically needs to be in the ordinance, or there needs to be some provision in the ordinance for staff dealing with unanticipated situations. But I see Trishka shaking her head.
No, it's a procedural thing that actually has been implemented by administration in the past, and we'll just continue implementing it the same way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other council comments? Or yeah?
I would really like to vote for this. I know how much work has gone into it. I see there are people in the audience who live in Bank Street and are here to make their plea. I know it's a compromise, but I, in principle, do not feel that we should be going in the direction of creating private residential streets in the center of our commercial district. And some of my favorite people live on Bank Street. Tony Nellison, top of the list. I know how important this is to him, but I don't feel that we as council members can be making decisions based on who happens to be living there at this time. Some of the affordable housing overlay ordinances that we've passed, we've done a tremendous amount of work to craft them in ways that incentivize developers to create housing that further incentivizes car-free living in the center of town. And I know that the future of what used to be the borough is dependent on retaining the character of the borough, which stands in contrast to West Windsor or Montgomery or any of the other towns around us that are designed around parking and wide roads and cars. And what makes our borough charming and makes people want to visit is that it was mostly designed and was already existed prior to contemporary zoning. And I feel that where we're going with this is the suburbanization of our small urbanized commercial core. And we have an entire township, former township, which was designed on the suburban model. And people don't come to visit it because it's not really, from an aesthetic standpoint, something that people want to visit. They come to visit the former borough because of how charming it is. And part of the charm is the mixed use, the density, and I just want to say I'm very sympathetic to the people who would like to have a spot for their car, but I wonder where we draw the line. And I think I gave the example, which is not a precise example, but that I live close to town, but just slightly farther out. We don't have a garage. It's a bit awkward not to have a garage, but I made that choice. We made that choice when we bought the house, and I'm not asking the town to provide a garage now for our car. Again, I know it's not a precise analogy, but I think people make choices where to live, whether to live in the center of town or whether to live in what is the majority of the town, which was, created on a more of a mid-century suburban model where you can have as many cars as you want. And I'm just not sure that this, from a long-term planning standpoint, which is always my focus on council, gets us where we want to go. I think it sets a dangerous precedent. So I'm very open to being convinced otherwise by any of my colleagues right now, but that's sort of where I am tonight.
Okay, thank you. Eve?
I thought I was going to be the only one taking this position, but I agree with my colleague, Councilwoman Sachs. I'm concerned about privatizing the street. I'm concerned that the solution, as proposed, I think I was the one who proposed the annual lottery, exactly for the reason Councilman Cohen said, but it will leave most people who live on the street unsatisfied and their need unmet. I'm very concerned about setting a precedent for residents of other streets to ask for the same treatment. As I've said before, the streets are public property, all the streets, and I don't like the idea of privatizing them or prioritizing the people who live on the street over other needs in what is a business and commercial community. And I was going to say the ordinance does address one issue that's been raised as compared to some of the other areas where we're thinking about providing on-street parking for people who don't have driveways. As Councilman Cohen said, this does not create a situation where properties will become more valuable, because should this be enacted, it would be a lottery in which I think we have 25 houses, 24 drawing for 13 spots, so about 50-50-ish or slightly less. But anyway, I too feel for the people who live on the street who are looking for a solution to their parking problems, but I just don't think this is it. And my apologies also to the staff and others who've worked on solving these problems for so long, to throw a monkey wrench in an opposition in at the end.
Okay. Leticia?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out that in a way we already have set a precedent. I believe it was maybe 20 years ago already that the high school residents, the neighborhood, were given they're allowed to have 4 free permits because they had raised concern that they would come home and there were students who were parking and others who were parking in front of their homes, and they've advocated for a residents-only permit system, which has been in place, where each resident gets 4 free permits so that they are assured that especially during the academic year, they will always have a place to park in front of their home, including households that have garages and driveways. So I just want to point out that in a way we already did set a precedent.
Yes, but not this council.
Okay. Let me just, David, see if there's anybody else. Does anybody else that hasn't spoken yet have a comment? Or Leighton?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to hear from municipal staff. I would like to really be able to drill down on exactly where we're at right now. and maybe he could give us a review of what the permit parking situation is on Bank Street. Yeah, what is being proposed, I think that is, yeah, I'd just like to know a little bit more about what is being proposed. That seems to be the problem now.
Councilman Layton Newland, as far as I know, there is no current permit parking on Bank Street.
I believe there is overnight parking permits.
There are overnight
Right.
parking permits. No. Are there?
Yes. Overnight
The
only.
residents are here.
Residents can apply for overnight parking permits for Bank Street, but only
Okay.
a certain number can go out because the
you,
size of the
Dawn.
street, there's a limited number.
All right, thank you. So it's similar to what's going on in the tree streets and also in Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood. Okay, thank you.
Michelle and then David.
So, yeah, my understanding, and I know that this is an exceptional street because of the amount of residential units that do not have driveways, but I thought that the idea was, in fairness, if we implement this for the tree streets in Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood and we do permits where residences that don't have driveways would be allowed to have a permit, that would be the only way that someone could have a permit. But with Bank Street, the exception is because there's so many residences there. So my understanding was it was more in fairness and balance with the other streets that had the same issue. You know, I don't think anything is forever. I really believe that as, you know, we progress, I think we need to really look at parking bank and other infrastructure, and there may be other solutions. I don't see this as a long-term solution, but I think it's trying to alleviate some real problems that we have for the residents there. So that's kind of where I see it right now, and I thought it was really kind of a balance and a fairness with the other neighborhoods that are similar. So, but I'm listening, so.
David.
Yeah, I just want to explain a little bit about the deliberations of the Permit Parking Task Force, which led to the recommendation of this particular permit regime for Bank Street. And it was very explicitly not trying to create a special exception to the rules, but rather we were looking throughout the town at the needs. We were prioritizing residents, but also trying to address the needs of other users. In all the other neighborhoods, Witherspoon Jackson, the tree streets especially, but also the high school zone, the reality is that most of the houses have driveways. There are more parking spaces on the street than there are houses that don't have driveways. So what we did throughout the town was to try to meet the needs of the residents without driveways, and then meet the needs of customers at the local businesses, meet the needs of visitors, meet the needs of employees, sort of in that hierarchy. And so the regime that was proposed for Bank Street was based on the exact same principles as what we were considering for other neighborhoods, but just because of the numbers of houses without driveways and the numbers of parking spaces, it resulted in a different set of rules for this street. So I just wanted to, I guess, make clear that, in my mind, this doesn't set a precedent that other neighborhoods could try and ride on the coattails because the logic behind it was created in harmony with the proposals for the other neighborhoods at the same time.
Okay. Any other council comments before we get to public comment? Mia?
Just very briefly, I want to say, in terms of the high school, it's very different character. It's a residential neighborhood. It's not a mix. It's not the center of our mixed-use commercial center. In terms of Bank Street, I also want to say that there were a small number of people on the street who felt very strongly that they needed a space for their car. And the situation with the lottery actually gives the opportunity for there are a number of rental, multi-family rental dwellings on that street, and it's conceivable, if not even likely, that houses with people who haven't even had expressed an interest in having a car on that street will now have the opportunity, and the people who wanted it to begin with won't. So I don't know that that's just something that concerns me. Michelle, in terms of the temporary, I'll just say there's not such a thing as temporary offering of parking in Princeton. Once you give it, good luck with getting it back. I don't think it's ever happened. But and David, in terms of the overall scheme, again, I personally have never subscribed to the concept that one size fits all in terms of parking for the town, because every neighborhood has its own developmental trajectory and history. Some are mixed use, some are entirely residential. But I am also, if people decide to live, in the Tree Streets or on Bank Street, and they have a disability or really, have a need, and they are not able to walk far, that's one thing. But, again, if people decide, as I said the first time, to live with all the amenities and the benefits that living close to the center of town brings, which is a walkable lifestyle, which is waking up in the morning, going around the corner, getting coffee, having everything at your fingertips, I don't think it's fair to also add value to those people's property. We are adding value to those properties, and I know there were several former council women who made the point at the beginning of this debate, and I have to say I agree with them, that the houses that don't have driveways have over time sold for less. I wouldn't say that it's missing middle per se, but I think there's been some benefit to keeping those prices low. And ultimately, where we want to go as a town is to have people living in our core who are willing to live car-free. So for all of these reasons, I'm not just concerned about this, but I continue to be concerned about the direction we're going. Even if precedents have been set in the past, the fact that we're growing means those precedents may need to be reconsidered. So.
Okay, thank you. David?
So let me just be clear. Should we not only not give 24-hour permits, but should we remove the overnight permits that are currently available on Bank Street? Based on the rationale that you're expressing, I don't see why we wouldn't get rid of the overnight parking permits.
My quick answer to that is that I think that's a more of an economical use of space, because you have people during the day, consumers and employees who are coming in and can use those spaces, and then they leave at night, and presumably the spaces then would be used by residents, so I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Any new council comments? If not, maybe we could do public comment, and then we can come back to see if we have more to say after we hear those comments. Okay. Here in the room, Mr. Kreider, I believe you had actually signed up earlier, so I know you want to talk about this, so why don't you come up first?
Chip Kreider, 22 Bank Street. I've been on Bank Street longer than anyone, which means I'm an old man. There's some serious flaws in this ordinance. We can be fixed. But first of all, your numbers are off a little. You say there's 13 parking spaces. Well, that's only if everyone parks neatly and the person with the handicap permit doesn't use it. In reality, usually there's only 12 parking spaces, and you subtract the handicap guy, so there's 11 spaces it should be in the lottery. Your 39 dwelling units is correct. We figured 14 dwelling units have off-street parking because one of the driveways is split between two owners and they won't agree. So that means you have a less than 50% chance of, quote, winning this lottery. The real problem is the resource is not shared. If you give somebody a lucky winner 24 hours to park on the street and you tell everyone else they can't park on the street at all, you've just told more than half the people that they have no access to their house legally, day or night. Gone. I own my house, I pay my taxes, I've been there for years, and suddenly I don't have access to my house. You might as well move me out into the middle of the field. Before, when you had the all-night permits and the 2-hour limit, the resource was shared. And what happened, we got into this mess because enforcement stopped because of COVID. And enforcement was whittled away over the years. They said, well, maybe if you have an all-night permit, we won't ticket you for 2 hours. And then some people started staying for 24 hours. The resource has got to be shared. It's not. So what could you do? I think you should try starting the enforcement again consistently, both all night and during the day, the 2 hours. And, well, if you want to make it resident only, it's up to you. But you've got to be able to get to your house. People live there. And all these exceptions. Oh, well, if it's a contractor with a commercial plates, he can park on the street. But if I'm a homeowner and I throw my tools in my truck and bring the materials and I didn't win the lottery, I can't park on the street. I can't work on my house. It's just odd. So I think you need to table this, try reinstating the enforcement consistently, and then tweak it a little. But to put it in right now the way it is, it'd be a big error, and you're going to have a lot of mad people. My wife will talk about the more human aspects of this.
Thank you, Chip. Just one reminder for everybody as you come up, that the timer's pretty obvious. There's a 3-minute limit, so thank you, Chip, very much for watching the timer.
I have 1 second left?
Yeah. I just want to remind people about that. And Chip, you started off real well because you said your name and address. There's another thing I should have reminded everybody to do when you come up. So having said that, Gene, you were next on the list, so if you would come up.
Jean Kreider, 22 Bank Street. Haven't lived there quite as long as Chip.
So, I'm sorry, the other thing I got to say to everyone
Just the
is,
microphone?
at some point, we're going to replace that little gooseneck thing so it actually holds the microphone up, but in the meantime.
Okay, is that
Thank
better?
Yeah.
All right, Jean Kreider, 22 Bank Street. I think I moved on the street in 1993. I really appreciate all the work everybody's been putting into this, but I've always been of the philosophy that the street should be shared. It works pretty well. You have to unload your groceries. You have your baby to get out of the car. You have things that you need to drop off, and the 2-hour parking works just fine. It would be lovely if it was just residential only, but I understand that you would not be able to do that unless you had a license plate reader, and that's still off in the distance, I believe. So with a license plate reader and residential only, and the permit parking as it is overnight, by attrition, eventually, if you don't, I think you could have it where the new homeowners would only have 1 car, which is what seems to be happening recently. And the homes without driveways are still just sold for over $1 million. So that driveway isn't hurting the cost of the property values. So we have rentals, we have people that have to change their apartments. They don't have commercial vehicles, and they often do it on their own in their vans with their parents coming to drop them off and pick them up. And without having access to the street during those changeover times, that's a problem. The thought of the lottery that you couldn't share the permit within your household seems a little odd. And also, if you do a lottery, what we've found over the years is that if you don't have a a parking place where if you're going to have more than one car, then you'll lose that parking space if you don't use it every year. And it's just hard to get back. I used to park over on Green in the garages that got torn down for the Hillier development, which is nice. I like it. So my one question I have is it possible to have zones where the apartment dwellers and the people that don't win the lottery overnight could park in a different zone instead of, or even if a secondary lot, if you're going to do the lottery, which I'm not in favor of, a secondary lottery that would allow people to park elsewhere. I mean, many people have multiple cars. We've been here a long time. You wouldn't have expected the parking to go away. So it's going to be a huge lifestyle change come January 1st, 2023, if this is implemented. And we don't win the lottery, that would be troublesome. And having raised children on, oops, I'm out of time, on the street, I used to park on Green and take the carriage back and forth to Green with the babies and leave the groceries on the front porch until I got back because there would be no parking. So it's a real challenge.
Thank you.
Done.
Okay, other people in the room that want to talk on this topic, feel free to come up to the microphone. Okay. Adam, there's a hand raised I see on Zoom. Can we bring that person in? And whoever 300-53307 is, just give us your name and address, and then your comments.
Hi, this is Anne-Marie Salmon, and I live at 19 Bank Street with my husband Diego. We were very interested to really better understand the criteria behind the lottery. I was also interested to hear the councilwoman who spoke about not having a garage when she bought her house and knowing that that would be an issue. When we bought this house 16 years ago, we were told that there were permits for overnight parking. And that was one of the reasons for buying the house, was the fact that we could park. And now it would seem that with a lottery, if we don't win that lottery, that will be taken away from us. My 96-year-old mother lives with us. And if we don't win the lottery, how am I supposed to bring her into the house? Do I have to just leave the car in the middle of the street, drop her off, and then go and park somewhere? I'm not sure how that would work. I think one of the ways that this could work is that there are many rentals. We've been paying taxes on this property for the last 16 years. Would it be possible to look at those houses that don't have driveways, that are with owners, and maybe who've lived here, and let us at least park overnight? We did have 2 cars. We sold one because we were having to pay to park it on Chambers Street in the parking garage there. I also wonder how we'll manage. We both work from home. So this now means that every 2 hours, we have to leave whatever work we're doing and go and find parking somewhere. It just isn't practical. And as I said, I understand the council members thinking that this is a good idea, but they don't live on Bank Street. And to me, these really are platitudes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Adam, do we have anyone else on Zoom that has a hand up? Okay, Benjamin?
Hi, good evening. How are you? My name is Benjamin Newton. I'm a resident at 28 Bank Street. I grew up in Princeton, so it's lovely to have just moved back. I also have a 15-month-old baby who just moved with us to Bank Street, who's determined to break Chip's record on the street. So we're off to a pretty good start. Having a baby and relying on a car for the numerous sundries that come with that baby, losing potential parking on the street wouldn't necessarily be tenable to us. We bought our house recently knowing we didn't have access to a space. We're also very interested in the prospect of overnight parking registration, and would be anxious at the idea that we would potentially lose that. My question is, a few questions, but along the lines of where Anne Marie was going, really looking at the rights of owners versus renters, exploring that. And then the second question is seeing if there's any leverage with the Spring Street garage as well for owners that live nearby town. I know that maybe opens things up, but we have a particularly busy street with a lot of activity happening with development downtown. And any opportunities for us to get parking would be worthwhile. Grateful having moved back to town to have this opportunity to speak to the council, and appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Adam, do we have anyone else on Zoom? Okay, that looks like that's everyone so far. Council, all right, David, Michelle, Eve.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to a couple of the comments from the public. One, it's understandable that you wouldn't have picked up on this because it was in a separate ordinance that's on for tonight, but the loading space that is on Bank Street is available to residents for up to 30 minutes for loading and unloading their car. So I think that, staff's vision was that would be the solution to some of the difficulties that you're talking about. And the other comment that I wanted to make, one of the callers talked about the overnight permits, but they're really no more available than these 24-hour permits that we're talking about. They're given out in the exact number as however many parking spaces are available on the street. So you're still in a situation where many residents of dwellings without a driveway would not have access to overnight parking permits if we keep the current regime in place.
Okay, Michelle?
I think I have more questions than I have now than I did before. So, first of all, the lottery system doesn't sound like that would work at all. It doesn't sound like it would be very fair. But what I'm really not understanding is, I keep hearing, and I'm hearing from the residents, their willingness to share the street. We know that we need other parking as well. And one of the problems, I think, on some of these streets, Tree Streets, Bank Street, is students parking where they shouldn't be parking because there's no regulation or short regulation. So I'm just wondering, would it be helpful to it seems like we're looking for a solution for a problem that is not the problem we're identifying. It sounds like the overnight parking permits were working, and they were something that we're able to share. Could we perhaps look at restarting that again and seeing how that works? Maybe starting the overnight permit parking at 6 or 7 o'clock until 8 a.m. I'm not sure what the regimen was before, and then maybe going from 2 to 3 hours as a limit. But, that way you have some patron and other turn during the day when people are not needing that parking space because they're working, or they know that they need to move their car during the day, but they can park there overnight, and that they're sharing it, and anyone who doesn't have a driveway is eligible. I also heard that, perhaps LPR technology would be more efficient. I think we're hearing that a lot. This may also be a regimen for the other tree streets. It's a very complicated situation, but it seems to me that we're maybe going overboard or trying too hard with this lottery system, and it's not even what the residents are looking for, so it doesn't seem like it would make anybody happy to go in the direction that we have here. And I know that, I know the Permit Parking Task Force and the staff has done a tremendous amount of work, so I want to respect the fact that, they have more expertise in this than I do, but from what I'm hearing from residents, it doesn't seem like this is actually the solution either. So we might have to go back to the drawing board.
Eve?
Michelle, isn't our goal to make everyone unhappy? I thought that, isn't our goal to make everyone unhappy?
A good compromise means nobody comes out happy. Right?
Sorry, I couldn't resist. I have a question first, and I don't know if David can answer, which is how are the overnight parking permits distributed now? On what basis?
I don't know if Dawn knows the answer to that.
The way the current overnight ordinance is first, the street has to be an eligible street. Then there can be no off-street parking available at the particular block and lot. And the hours are 6 p.m. to 9 a.m.
So what happens on a street like Bank Street where you have more eligible people than
We
spots?
have to do a waiting list.
So it's basically seniority. The longer you're there.
As long as like the individuals continue to renew, they maintain their permits, but if they let it lapse for an extended period of time and spaces open up, then we can move on the waiting list to the next person online.
Okay. All right. So if all right, I can understand some arguments for why that is a more just system based on the people that have been there for longer, as opposed to the lottery where everybody, even if they're newly arrived, would have the same chance. So that's definitely an issue we should consider. I think that I love the fact that we have residents who are talking about sharing the street, and that is really what I would hope would be done, because again, if we do issue I guess it would be 11 permits by lottery, some of those people are going to be away during the day, and then those spots are empty and not used or usable. So I'm concerned about that. Again, to have this is public space. I understand the need for residents certainly to be able to gain access. I wonder if somebody might be able to comment on whether having a very elderly person living in your household might entitle you to a special, not a driver's pass, but maybe some kind of handicap access. I don't know if anyone can comment on that, but I do see that we're taking what is a scarce resource and reserving it for the lucky few at the expense of others who might be able to use the space and share it. So I now have additional reasons for concern about the ordinance as it is. And I love Councilwoman Perrin-Lambros's suggestion. We're moving towards reinstituting overnight parking enforcement. Maybe keep this in abeyance and see if reinstituting that would deal with some of the issues. The other thing, and I'd love to just get a quick input from at least the residents in the room, we're moving more towards 3-hour parking away from 2-hour parking. Is that an issue of concern to you, or that wouldn't matter? That would be okay, or no, not okay? Okay. All right, maybe we can correspond about that at some point. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, so, sorry. Mia had her hand up next, then Leticia.
Yeah, I just want to say I feel even more strongly that, I think Council was persuaded that, we should maybe put aside some of our principles and vote for this because it was so important to the residents, and that would, I was willing to be persuaded of that, but instead we're hearing from some of the most vocal residents in the street that even they're not happy with this, so I just don't understand why we're proceeding, and I do think that we should table it tonight. I think there's more work because if we're doing things that we feel uncomfortable with and we're not even making the people happy who are the reason why we're supposedly doing these things, then it seems pointless. But I also just want to say, to your point about the owners versus renters, on the one hand, I do think there's something to be said about the long-term owners tend to be people who are at an older stage of their life. They're not moving into their apartment with a laundry cart and, are there for a year. But on the other hand, just in general, the history of stigma attached to renting in Princeton, and from a legal perspective, I know our attorneys have underscored for us some of the difficulties about discriminating in any legal framework against classes of residential dwellings, owners versus renters. So there's that. And finally, I wanted to just highlight what several people mentioned about the zone option, and I think that is something we really should consider, is the zone opportunity, so that a wider swath of the residents there could get what they need, and also wouldn't involve such a disturbance to the existing patterns of the commercial activity on the street.
Thank you. Leticia?
Yes, thank you. What I wanted to comment on was that initially the permit parking task force did not look at Bank Street or residential parking, permit parking on Bank Street. It wasn't until a group of Bank Street residents came to the task force advocating for permit parking on their street, because there was concern that once the Graduate Hotel opened, that would actually create a situation for those residents where during the day especially, they would not be able to find parking on their street. So the task force actually did look at permit parking. We did not, I think the lottery was not something that we considered. That was something that came from staff as a possible solution. And hearing from the comments today, I would suspect that the issue is not with permit parking for residents of that street, but the possibility that those who already have the overnight parking would lose it. So if there was a solution where we could find a way to turn those overnight parking permits into residential permits, I wonder if that would be if that would be also be seen the same way as the lottery parking. That some of our residents are concerned of, that they might not be able, that they would lose their overnight parking if they did not win the lottery. But it's not something that obviously has no clear solution in doing it fairly. So if we do have to table it and bring it back for consideration, I know that issue is still going to exist from those residents that came to the permit parking task force in the first place, asking us to find a solution for them.
Yeah.
Okay. David was next, and then Leighton.
Yeah, so, I just want to make clear that I'm not entirely convinced of this particular ordinance as well. And when we had our work session, I actually expressed the concern that, if we only have the 24-hour permits, what will tend to happen is the street will be parked up at night, and that during the day, when the people with permits leave, nobody will be able to use those spaces, and you will actually have not an efficient use of this scarce resource. So that is a problem with the way that it's structured right now, that I'm cognizant of. And was there something else? Oh, yeah, I just want to go back to my very first comment, which is that the lottery system will, I mean, if we're interested in pushing things towards a more car-free lifestyle in the center of town, the lottery actually helps with that compared to the sort of ownership rights in an overnight permit, which really allows residents on the street without a driveway who may have been living for 10 years without a car to, once they get off the waiting list, buy a car. So purely from a climate action standpoint, I think the lottery is an improvement. Chip and I actually talked about the possibility of daytime permits and nighttime permits for this street as a way to efficiently use the street during the day, where residents who don't have an overnight permit could at least park on the street during the day. I think that is something that becomes more possible with the LPR technology. So, you know, I'm kind of amenable to tabling this as well, and wait until we have the license plate recognition technology in place, and then reconsider whether that provides new opportunities or better opportunities to really use the parking in a smart way.
Thanks. Leighton.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, what's clear to me with all the debate that we've had tonight and hearing from residents on Bank Street that we do not have a consensus whatsoever. I want to say, you know, to Jim Purcell and the engineering staff, thank you for the work that you're doing, have done. This is a very tough needle to thread. I mean, think for a minute if you were a resident that lived on Bank Street. It's got to be a nightmare. I mean, for me, if I lived there and couldn't find a parking place when I came home, I'd be pretty upset. I don't think we have a consensus, and as hard as it may be, I think we, you know, maybe not start over, but really, you know, take another look at this. To Councilwoman Sachs's concern, we are moving and want to move toward a less car-centric town. But at the same time, I think we have to balance that with being a long-term resident on Bank Street, which is one of the most difficult streets to navigate in Princeton. We have already identified that we have a greater demand than we have supply. So I don't think we're going to fix this tonight, and we've already, you know, spent a lot of time on it. So I think we need a do-over. We need to hear more specifically from the residents on the street, and take another look at it and try to come up with a solution that works. And just one more thing, not anything temporary. I'm not sure about the lottery, but you know, you have people that have lived on the block and on the street for a long time, and whatever we do has to be something that's a done deal that's going to stand the test of time, because there's always going to be new residents moving in and new wishes and new wants. But I think we should take some time to get it right.
Okay. Okay, Eve.
I just want to be sure when we reconsider that while the residents are one constituency for the street, this is a street in our downtown, and I don't believe personally that it should be made exclusively for the use of residents only.
Okay, any other council comments or questions that we...
Yeah.
Michelle?
Very briefly. You know, I heard that one of the catalysts too of this is the concern about the Graduate Hotel opening up, and I would just say, let's look at the Graduate Hotel as a possible help and solution, because they may end up having excess overnight parking spaces, so you never know. So we can take a look at that as well and talk to them, because we can't build more streets, so, and it is a scarce resource. Thanks.
Okay. I think we've covered every possible aspect on this at this point. Oh, no. I'm sure. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a roll call vote. Go ahead, Mia.
Are we moving to table it, or
The original motion was on the ordinance as presented, but if you or any council member wishes to ask whoever made the motion to change their motion to table, that would be appropriate. And maybe we should ask our attorney as to what is the legal difference, whether we vote no or whether we vote to table.
If you vote no, you're obviously defeating the ordinance in its current form. You can always introduce a different ordinance at an upcoming meeting. If you vote to table, you are literally taking this ordinance off the table, and it just kind of sits out there until somebody wants to bring it back. But of course, at that point, the public's not going to know when it's coming back unless you renotice. The third option is to adjourn this to a date certain and continue the public hearing.
Right, so if we table or adjourn this, though, we are bringing back the exact same ordinance.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
If you're tabling until someone wants to bring this back,
But it
it
would
just
be,
sits in no man's land, and you could always introduce a different one.
okay, so, no, I'm just trying to get to, I think, Mia, if
I'm-
the sense is that it would probably come back in a different form, we should just vote no?
Totally agree.
Okay.
I mean, for myself.
It's certainly cleaner procedurally, especially from the clerk's perspective, because then they don't have an ordinance with a number that's sort of sitting, as I said, in limbo, which is what happens when they're tabled.
I actually do have a question on that. So if we say either table or vote no on this, the existing ordinance, which for residents on Bank Street, only those who have overnight parking permits are allowed to park overnight on the street.
It's whatever the current regulations are, and I don't want
I
to
just wanted
misspeak
to
as to
clarify.
what they are,
No, I
but
just wanted
whatever's
to
in place
clarify.
now
Yes.
remains in place unless and
Yes.
until amended.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? David?
No.
Yeah, I guess this is for Dawn. Since parking hasn't been enforced, are we in a position where there are current residents who had overnight permits, who haven't renewed them, who would be in that category that you described as not continuing to have access to their permit, and new people would come off the waiting list?
I want to say almost all of the existing residents on Bank Street that have come in and maintained their permits.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on the motion? Okay, roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
No.
Ms. Niedergang?
No.
Mr. Cohen?
I'm torn. I sort of want to give staff a little boost by voting yes.
Ms. Braga?
I'm also going to vote yes.
Ms. Sachs?
I'm going to give staff a boost and appreciation. Thank you. And I'm also going to vote no.
Mr. Newland?
Echoing Councilwoman Sachs's thoughts, thanks for all the hard work you guys do. Tough needle to thread. No.
Okay, motion is defeated, and we'll move on to Ordinance 2022-34. An ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regulating public parking spaces for charging of electric vehicles and amending Chapter 19 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and Chapter 11 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Is there a motion? Thank you, Eve. Is there a second? Thank you, David. Okay, any council questions or comments? This is the, well, you've all read it. I don't need to tell you. Sorry.
Mayor.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eve.
I have just a very brief clarifying comment that the cost for charging electric vehicles overnight, to me, the display is a little bit confusing, so I just want to indicate that cost is $1 in total overnight, not adding up the charge for each hour, which I think comes to $10 or $12. The scale's a little bit different than for charging during the day.
Any,
I just want to make a comment that it's exciting that we're putting in charging stations at Witherspoon parking lot, and it really serves a need for members of the public who live in rented housing where they don't have the ability to put in a charging station for themselves and have a troglodyte landlord who won't do it for them. So it's really, the need for this is a result of something really forward-thinking that the municipality's been working on and is coming to fruition.
Any other comments while we're... Eve, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. Your comment was questioning the rate for overnight, or did you?
Oh, no, it just, I found the presentation a little confusing, and I had a conversation with Jim Purcell about it. I just wanted to say
Okay.
for the record, in case other people shared that confusion, I just wanted to clarify what the cost was.
Sorry.
But it
Thank
may only be me, so.
Okay. All right. Any public comment? Anyone in the room that has a comment on our vehicle charging stations that'll go in the parking lot? And also, okay. How about on Zoom? Is there anybody on Zoom that has a comment on this ordinance? All right, we'll close the public hearing on the ordinance and roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. All right, now we have 3 ordinance introductions, and as usual, we don't discuss ordinance introductions. They're discussed at the public hearing dates. First one is Ordinance 2022-35, an ordinance by the Municipality of Princeton regulating loading zones and amending Chapter 19 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. Public hearing will be October 24th, 2022. Is there a motion on that introduction? Leticia, thank you. Michelle has the second. Roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Ordinance introduction for 2022-36, an ordinance by the Municipality of Princeton regulating public parking on Witherspoon Street between Nassau Street and Spring Street, and amending Chapter 19 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, 1974. Public hearing, October 24th, 2022. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Is there a second? Leighton has the second. Roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
The last ordinance introduction is Ordinance 2022-37, an ordinance by the Municipality of Princeton authorizing the establishment of 1 or more dog parks in Princeton parks and recreation areas, and amending Chapter 16 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Public hearing, October 24th, 2022. Is there a motion? Oh, okay. Mia, I'm not sure who had their hand up first. I'll go with Mia with the motion and Leticia with the second. Okay, I got it right. Thank you. Roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, now we're moving to resolutions. 22-341, resolution of Mayor and Council of Princeton endorsing application for designation of a special deer management area and application for community-based deer management plan for 2022-2023. This was carried from the September 27th, 2022 meeting. Is there, Eve, is that a motion? Thank you very much. Is there a second? Leighton has the second. Questions on the motion?
This is the birth control one, right?
I'm sorry?
It's the whole thing, including birth control. It's the whole
Okay.
package, of which the birth control is a component.
So it's the birth and the death all together?
This is everything.
Yes, do you want me to go into details? Okay.
Well, this makes it very difficult for some of us to vote, but, okay.
Okay. Other questions or comments on the resolution? Seeing none, any public comment on the resolution? Okay.
Sorry, I just, my thanks to our municipal attorney for all her work over many, many years on this. I know it was a lot of work, very intricate, and really appreciate it. So thank you.
Okay. All in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Ayes have it. 22-359, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing the installation of temporary dog park at Community Park South. Is there, Leticia was really quick on that one, has the motion, Mia has the second. Questions on the resolution? David?
Just in looking at the map of CP South, it is, no pun intended, in left field for one of the playing fields, one of the ballpark diamonds, whatever you want to call it. And I know the memo said that that field is lightly used, but I don't know if we have somebody here from rec or, who can vouch for the fact that it's not a problem to not have that playing field.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. Evan Moorhead, Executive Director, mentioned that that was one of the less utilized fields, and that would be the most, I guess, the best spot for this, for the dog park on that location.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, and I'll just say from the rec side too, I mean, it's not really
Michelle.
utilized. Oops, sorry. It's not utilized because of the shape it's in. And part of the idea of doing a master plan for CP South is to look at everything. So that's why this will be temporary for now. But hopefully a dog park is in the master planning process with the Community Park South. So hopefully this is something that will be a longer term. But for now, it's in an area that would make the most sense, and it's not taking any fields away right now that are used much, if at all.
Okay. Any other, I'm sorry, Mia?
I just wanted to also answer David's question that this field has been in such a state of disrepair that it was not considered safe for youth recreational play. So even as far back as 4 years ago, Councilwoman Niedergang and Fraga reached out to the rec department and had a preliminary agreement to use this. This is, I think, 2018, 2019. Of course, it's not ideal to continue it in that state forever, but the mud, the mini sinkholes, the erratic playing fields, it's not okay for kids, but it's okay for dogs. So that's the deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eve?
I know this is a very specific resolution rather than the more general ordinance, which we will hear in 2 weeks, but I want to extend my thanks and congratulations to my colleague, Councilwoman Sachs, for whom this has been an issue near and dear to her heart and who has worked tirelessly on this since before she was on council, and she is a large part of the reason we're here today, so thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other council questions or comments at this point? All right. Anyone in the room have a question or comment they wish to make? All right. We have, Adam, I think we have 2 hands up on Zoom. Can you bring in the first person, please? Julie?
My turn? Yeah, Julie. Hi. Oh, you can't see me. I don't know why. Okay. Anyway, maybe you just normally can't see me. Anyway, so I'm Julie Zimmerman. I live at 87 Cedar Lane, and I'm thrilled that this is happening. I don't know if it's in reference to this one or the next one on Quarry Park, which happens to be closer to my house. I'm just thrilled it's happening. It has been such a long time coming. My son, as a bar mitzvah project, tried to lobby council to have a dog park established. And to give you an idea of how long ago that was, he has now graduated college. He is a fully functioning adult living in another state. He has a job, but that was his wish. You know, that was 10 years ago and probably 2 or 3 dogs ago. So I know in the interim, in addition to Mia, there have been lots of other people who have tried to motivate the council to get this going. And why it took so long is a complete mystery to me. And frankly, it's not such a favorable insight into how our local government works and how it prioritizes and listens to its citizens. This should have been a relatively easy one, it would seem to me. It's like head counts of people who have dogs. What do people want? What do they care about? What are their priorities? In terms of like cost, it's relatively low compared to digging up the main street in town. So it just seems to me that there was something in the powers that be camp that kept this one off the front burner. So in any event, I'm glad it's finally in the front burner. Thank you, Mia. I'm very happy it's happening. It's a no-brainer. It builds community. It builds unity. It promotes healthy behavior, being outdoors, all good things. So I look forward to seeing you all at the dog park. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Adam, can we bring in the next person, please? Okay, Sam?
Hi there, if you can hear me. This is Sam Wong, 283 Nassau Street. I just wanted to weigh in and say that to thank Ms. Sachs and to thank the council for its efforts. A small step like this forward is still a good step forward, and of course is great practice for further steps forward. I regret that this remote participation is not as interactive as it could be. It would be nice to see you and to be able to use the chat, but I appreciate that you need to control human traffic out here. But in any event, thank you very much for the vote you just took. We residents and our dogs appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. All right, Adam, was there anybody else on Zoom? Okay, I think we've, oh no, there's another hand up, sorry. Annie?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. My name is Evan Anderson. I live at 302 John Street. I believe our house is the closest in proximity to Community Park South. We have a dog, and we fully support this and thank everyone for the work on having a dog park at Community Park South.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else, Adam? All right, that looks like that's everyone. Okay. All in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. There we go. 22-360, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing a pilot program for off-leash dogs at Quarry Park. Is there a motion on that?
Mayor, before
I'm sorry?
you asked for a motion, just for the record, there was an updated version of the resolution that was handed out to the council in a red line version in hard copy. There has been a further update to the update that went out shortly after that I can describe, but I just wanted to point that out to the council before a motion was made so that when the motion is made, we know what's being moved. So the further updated version of the updated version adds one final provision that gives the animal control officer the authority to suspend the pilot anytime that it's in the public interest to do so, such as for public safety reasons. So that one last thing is not reflected on the red line that you have.
Okay. All right, and we can still move on this even though the public hasn't seen the changes?
Sure, because it's a resolution, they can just be done in one meeting. I would just ask that if and when someone moves it, if they could just indicate which version they're moving.
All right, so we're on version 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Eve, do you have a motion?
I would like to move the amended red line version that was handed out to council this evening.
Okay, is there a second? Mia, thank you. All right, so just to be real clear, we are looking at the third version of this, which is the updated one to the handwritten one, to the typed one that was handed out.
Correct. So yeah, so version 1 is the original, that was in the agenda packet. Version 2 is what's before you. Version 3 is the one that I described that does just add that one subsection about giving the animal control officer the ability to suspend when public safety requires it.
Thank you. It's important for us to go through all that because the person doing the minutes who's doing this at some point later really needs to get it right. So,
yeah, and so I would just also, just by way of clarification, I hope I'm not out of turn, but Eve, were you moving version 2 or version 3?
I said the red line, the amended red line version that was handed.
Yeah, but what was handed out to you is version 2. Version 3 has that one additional
version
provision
3
about the animal control officer.
the update on this. So
And that puts back the bit about the animal control officer. I'm moving version 3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
And I seconded version 3.
Thank you, Mia. Council comments, questions? David?
Yeah, I'm just curious about what the, penalties are for violations. If somebody brings a dog that isn't appropriate to be in the dog park, and I assume, I'm not going to assume anything. How does enforcement work?
It's subject to the general penalties provision in the code. So like any other, most of your ordinance violations default to those general penalties, which are set by statute. So it's typically, I don't want to get it wrong, but it's either a fine or imprisonment or community service or any or all of those. It's set by the judge. So all you can do in your code, which is what you've done, is kind of set the broad parameters. But in each individual instance, it will be up to the municipal court judge what kind of penalty to mete out.
Okay, thanks.
So I got just a couple comments. I'm a little concerned about having a place for dogs to run without being fenced in. We did have something from our municipal excess liability group back in June of 2021 that had a list of risk control best practices, and one of those is having a 6-foot-high perimeter fence around a dog park. And so this really isn't a dog park. What we're doing is taking a regular park and saying dogs can run unleashed. So I'd be a little concerned as to how close Harrison Street is. If a dog decided to ignore its owner and run off, there's a playground right nearby. And I had a third great point that I wish I could remember, but I can't at the moment. So
can I answer that?
I'm sorry. I think the other point was, I think this is the worst time of year to try it because you're really not going to know how much activity is in the park on a day-to-day basis when school's out. But anyway, those are just some concerns, as long as we're aware of them when we vote on it. I'm sorry, Mia.
So the reason why we're doing this is because this is actually an arrangement that has been in place illegally for almost 3 years. So there are about, I'd say 20 to 30 dogs on any given morning, and they've chosen this spot, and they have been requesting that the council sanction that activity for some time. So it has been safely, it is actually, the pilot has been running for quite a number of years, and there has not been a single incident to either a child or a dog. I will also say that off-leash is the most common form of dog recreation in denser areas. It's something that exists throughout Manhattan and all 5 boroughs of New York City very successfully. As I've often said, for example, in Central Park, in any given day, you have off-leash dog recreation, then you have Tai Chi, then you have the lactating mommies, then you have the Little League, then you have parkour, everybody in the same area. It's a much more efficient, economical, and environmentally sustainable use of space because you're not having it just devoted to animals. It's also generally considered safer for the dogs, because when dogs are either on leash or in an enclosed area, they often tend to act in more aggressive ways. But obviously, in a dog park or in a designated off-leash recreation area, or in a children's park, you are expected to bring, to have your companion animal or child, should be behaving by according to certain norms. But because off-leash is something, recreation is not something that has been done legally in Princeton, although it's done throughout Princeton in various areas, including at Westminster on a daily basis. That's why this is a 90-day pilot. If there was any issue with it, then we will, obviously terminate it. I will say that I was part of the movement in New York City that changed the city charter to allow off-leash recreation in all 5 city parks, and it has been a major success over 2 decades. I feel very confident that if it can work in Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Staten Island, it can probably work in Princeton too. But if it doesn't, after 90 days, we can pull the plug. So.
Thank you. Any other council comments or questions? Okay, any public comment in the room? Yes, please come on up, just state your name and address.
I don't have to adjust this at all. My name is Leanne Hunter. I live at 71 Wigan Street. I just want to add, Quarry Park has been absolutely wonderful for us, and it's not quite as many as 20 dogs on a daily basis, but I'd say closer to 12 to 15. Sometimes there's just 5. I also want to say that what we have found is that people whose dogs do tend to be aggressive or do tend to be a little volatile don't come to the park. They don't want a situation any more than we do. All the dogs that have been coming on a almost daily basis are all very gentle and really have made friends with the other dogs. So it is kind of lovely, like their own little pack. I also wanted to point out that, yes, there is a playground in that park. However, it is fenced in. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to point out is it's in the perfect place because it's right in the middle of all those tree streets. All those houses in those tree streets have very little backyards. There's really no place for dogs to run around. So it's the perfect place for the residents in that community. And I also want to say that if the pilot does succeed, will Quarry Park continue to be used for off-park hours? Will the pilot, will it be okay in Quarry Park, or will it be used in a different park?
My understanding from staff is that, that is an area that was identified as, since it was already in use for off-leash and it has been successful, and it's centrally located, that depending on the results of the pilot, that it would be extended for another 90 days. And of course, then it's midwinter, so probably aren't a lot of residents who would complain about it. I think it's the hope that that would continue as off-leash, but again, what we're doing now is trying to look at the whole town. Ultimately, we would like to have a large dog park that could be used by the entire community, but it's most likely that that would be located not within walkable distance to town. So ideally, we'd have one very large dog park that people would drive to, and then a number of smaller, either off-leash or enclosed neighborhood dog parks that would be used on a walkable basis. And I also wanted to say about off-leash, because my colleague had asked me a question, that it's not all day. It's very restricted. It's not something that is viable in the middle of the afternoon, or it's in times when there aren't other people using that area, which is why it's used so often in dense urban settings. So this would just be before 9. I will say that in New York, it's before 9 and after 9. And one of the nice things about the after 9 is that it has managed to bring back spaces for residential use that previously were considered unsafe. I don't know if that's something we want to tackle right now in Princeton, but the off-leash hours that have been unofficially going on in Princeton have been, early in the morning before school and work, and residents are walking and using those areas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Okay. Adam, do we have anybody on Zoom that wants to make a comment on this? Oh, I'm sorry. Just come on up, state your name and address, and
hello, my name is Claudia. I live at 174 Guillot Avenue. We just moved here from Boston about a year ago, and we are thrilled that you are considering a dog park. In regards to the Quarry Park, in the process of us moving here from Boston, it's been quite the wonderful experience to be able to meet people that otherwise I would not have been able to meet had we not had the opportunity to inconspicuously meet during this time with other dogs and other people. And additionally, we have never had an incident once off-leash over at the Quarry Park where anyone felt in any way threatened or hurt because people brought their dogs in. As a matter of fact, we've invited other people to join us in order to be able to create a more sense of community, and we otherwise would not have had we not had the opportunity to have that gathering. And in addition to speaking to Mia, we do gather during a time that is not being used by children because the children are in school, and it isn't an early morning. It isn't a time where there's little to no traffic in that area. Children have already been boarded on their buses because we pass school buses as the kids are just being shipped out, walking out. The cross guards have already cleared the area, and we are there after that time, and it's not for a long time. So I highly, highly support the notion of having a dog park that is off-leash during this time as a pilot, and hopefully after the 90 days, which I do believe will be successful, that you will consider to continue to renew it for as long as the time allows, where no incidents of any kind of violence or any kind of concerns for public safety would be reported. And I really would appreciate for your consideration in that manner to move forward with this at an unlimited basis, with obviously constant review of, with whatever the animal control, which I would think they would probably go ahead and support this as well, knowing that they're not going to do much of anything. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, come on up.
Good evening. I'm Jeffrey Allen, 273 Jefferson, and I want to thank you guys for your time this evening. I'm here to also say that Princeton's a great community, and I think by establishing a dog park would make it even better. We think we have a good strategic location, but if there are other locations that the town will consider, we're open to that, and we look forward to your guidance and your support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in the room? Okay, terrific. Adam, anybody on Zoom? They hand up? Okay. Oh, there we go. Wendy?
Yes. Hi, this is Wendy Wilton. I'm at 5 Queenston Place, and I am proud to say that I have very fond of this group that is formed for off-leash hours in the morning. It has provided an immense feeling of community for all of us, both dogs and people alike. With COVID, I think there are a larger number of dogs that are now in our community. A number of people I know that are now have dogs in their homes longer because they're no longer commuting, etc. Really need to exercise their dogs well so that, again, that they're, getting the attention and the exercise they need. The off-leash hours provides that for the dogs. And again, it's just chance for a very widespread and unique group of people to meet and, support the community. So I strongly, request and appreciate the opportunity to try this pilot program. I think it benefits, again, both humans and furry animals alike. So thank you for all your help and considering this option.
Thanks, Wendy. All right. Adam, is there anybody else on Zoom? Okay, it looks like it's everybody. All right, so we'll vote on the, oh, I'm sorry,
Can
Michelle.
I make it? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to make a couple of comments. I've learned a lot about dog parks from Councilwoman Sachs, my colleague. It is definitely something that builds community. We had an earlier conversation tonight about if we allow more permit parking, will that, create, more cars? But in this case, I think having more dog parks an opportunity for off-leash, hopefully that people will be able to have more dogs. And, I think it's an equity issue too. I mean, it's building community because it brings people and the dogs together. When the dogs get together, the people talk and we get to know each other, and it's a wonderful thing. And it's also an equity issue because if you don't have, a large backyard, it's not prohibitive anymore if you have some dog parks. So I really love the idea of these neighborhood dog parks. I hope this is the beginning of something for Princeton. I'd like us to be a dog-friendly community. And I have to say that I'm a recently new Labrador Retriever puppy owner, and the other dogs I have at home, my little rescue doggies, are not dog park dogs, but I'm learning all about how the importance of a dog park is. So I'm really thrilled that this is happening tonight. So thank you all for coming out and supporting it. And again, thanks to my colleague, Councilwoman Sachs.
Eve?
I just want to clarify what we've been talking about and also what the previous people have said, that should, quote unquote, an incident arise, I think we need to look at it very carefully. After all, you could bring your child to a playground and another child could bite your child or push your child. That does not mean we close the playground. We look to see what happened, and so I just want to, an incident might occur. Hopefully it won't, but should it occur, we have to really consider the circumstances and whether it is the essence of the off-leash or the dog park, or rather, a particular, you can't keep, bad. I mean, my dog, who I love dearly, I would never in a million years bring to a dog park. It would be a disaster. And I know that. Maybe there are people who don't know that about their own pets. So I just want to make sure that we don't react should something occur, that we don't react in a kind of, that's it, we tried it, somebody, got bit or acted badly, that rather to look into, the actual circumstances and whether, what we can do to make sure that whatever happened, doesn't happen again. So rather than respond by pulling up the plug.
Yeah, and the resolution specifically mentions that as specific dogs could be banned if it's a single dog causing a problem. So it doesn't mean, as you said, right, yeah. All right, Leighton.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm the proud owner of a 10-year-old bully basset that's a half English bulldog and half basset hound. And he's my son. And you cannot walk a dog in an open space and not make friends. This is a wonderful idea, and it's good for the dogs, it's good for the dog owners, and it's good for building community. And, this is just a good idea, and hats off to you, Councilwoman Sachs, for the work you've done on this. Thank you.
Any other comments before we vote? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, that's everybody. All right, 22-361. Resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement with Arcadis US, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $5,000 for mini system number 35 sewer rehabilitation engineering design and bid phase services, and ratifying additional services under the 2021 agreement with Arcadis US, Inc. Is there a motion? Eve's got the motion. Is there a second? Michelle's got the second. Any questions or comments on the motion, on the resolution? Okay, any public comments or? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22362, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement to Remington and Vernik engineers in the not-to-exceed amount of $249,995 to create and update sanitary and stormwater sewer systems GIS layers. Is there, Eve, thank you. Mia's got the second. Any questions or comment on Eve?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm thrilled this is moving forward. Again, I just have a quick question, which is in the year since the original resolution was passed, we were able to spend, or the contractor was able to do about a third of the work envisioned. And I'm just wondering what the delays, was it pandemic related, and do we have reason to believe that the other 2/3 roughly in terms of dollar value of the work will be completed within the next year? I'm not sure what the obstacles were.
Jim Purcell, Assistant Municipal Engineer. The obstacles were essentially trying to actually find our systems in the field. It was more of a challenge than expected. They have mapped approximately 80% of our stormwater system at this point, and we do anticipate most of the rest of the work is the GIS data entry from that mapping. So we do anticipate that they will finish it this year.
Thank you.
Okay, David?
Jim answered my question as well.
Okay. Other council questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22363, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement in the not-to-exceed amount of $11,520 with Remington and Vernik engineers for GIS parcel maintenance and revisions for tax years 2021 and 2022. Is there, Mia, thank you, and Eve has the second. Questions or comments? Eve?
This is a question for Jim, I guess. Is this GIS layer at this point only, is this purely internal, only available to staff?
There are certain elements of GIS databases that are only available to the municipality itself and not to the residents. There's a lot of non-public information that we develop. Some of this information will be available to the public. Some of the information that we're entering is personal identification information that will only be available internally.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was commenting because I know that, you know, I look through the Oprah requests that we get, and it seems that a lot of those, you know, obviously I'm not advocating that confidential information should be revealed, but it seemed like a lot of those Oprah requests, which I know are both costly and time-consuming, could possibly be answered if we had the public-facing GIS. So. Hoping that we're moving in that direction.
We are, and we hope that that does reduce the amount of Oprah requests that we receive.
Other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 22364, a resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a contract amendment to National Water Main Cleaning in the amount of $4,400 for a total contract price of $20,900 for the purpose of performing closed-circuit television CCTV inspections of sanitary sewer laterals located in the Witherspoon Phase 2 and Phase 3 project areas, Green Street to Valley Road. Is there a motion? Leighton, thank you. Michelle's got the second. Questions, comments on the resolution? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22365, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing an amended cost share amount in the not-to-exceed amount of $26,250 for Princeton's 25% share for the modification of New Jersey Department of Transportation traffic signal on U.S. Route 206 at Edgerstone Road, previously approved by Resolution 20-186. Is there a motion? Thank you, Leighton. David's got the second. Questions on the motion? Eve.
Sorry, a quick comment. I just want to give a quick shout out to the Hun School for sharing the cost of that, including the increased cost with the municipality and taking some of that off the backs of the taxpayers.
Thanks for pointing that out. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
22-366, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing the award of a contract to Sunset Creations, Inc. for the Princeton Fall 2022 planting project in the not-to-exceed amount of $48,855. Is there a motion? Michelle's got the motion. David's got the second. This is for planting 100 trees in various places around town. Questions, comments?
I just want to say I think Sunset Creations does a really fantastic job. I'm glad they're our vendor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
22367, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing an agreement with PSE&G for the installation of streetlights at Rosedale Road, General Johnson Road intersection for an amount not to exceed $28,964.27. Is there a motion? Thank you, David. Is there a second? Mia's got the second. Questions or comments on the resolution? I would just say it's a great idea. Anything? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
22368, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing the award of a contract to Spring Irrigation Company, Inc. for the installation of an irrigation system at the Smoyer Park multipurpose field in the amount of $35,500. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Mia's got the second. Questions or comments on the resolution? Eve?
I would ask us of Evan, he's not here, I don't know, Jim, if you would know, is there typically in irrigating fields, is there an effort to be sure that it's done early in the morning to, mitigate the amount of evaporation, have the water be actually absorbed into the ground, or like are environmental concerns taking into account when doing the sprinklers?
I specifically don't know how we do it here, but typically you would do it during early morning hours when the park is not being used. You would not want to be doing it during the time when children are playing or dogs are running around without a leash.
No dog showers. Michelle, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say too, I mean, this was originally used as an overflow park in the memo that Evan wrote, and now, I mean, with the need, I mean, we've just got a dire need for more athletic fields, so it's really important to do irrigation so that we can utilize the fields as much as possible. So, just wanted to add that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
22369, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing the award of a contract to Gabrielli Truck Sales via Sourcewell contract number 060920-KTC for the purchase of one 2024 Kenworth T480V Jetvac in the amount of $468,595.35. Is there a motion? Thank you, David. Leticia's got the second. If I remember correctly, the cost of the truck went up since when we first approved it. It went up by about $50,000. So this would allow us to go forward with the purchase. Other questions or comments? Sorry, Leighton, was that you?
Yeah, what is the shelf life of the truck, if anyone knows?
Go ahead. The one we're getting rid of is a 2007, so it's got a pretty long shelf life.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. The old one's 2007, so what the expected life is, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a long time, thank you.
Yeah. And we actually have a pretty excellent staff down at the garage so I think we'll get maximum life out of this. David?
Just kind of a lighthearted, this is a pretty expensive piece of equipment. Is this the most expensive equipment that we have in our DPW fleet, or?
It might be.
It's a glorified vacuum cleaner, right?
Glorified wet vac. A glorified wet vac. It's not just a vacuum cleaner, it's a wet vac. Come on. Other, Michelle?
I mean, we continue to make really substantial investments in the sewer and, in the infrastructure, and there's a lot that we're doing, so it's really important. So I just want to point that out. I don't know if this is coming from the sewer trust fund funds or the capital. I think it was already approved in the capital budget, so just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, I mean, all joking aside, I mean, some of the equipment is extremely expensive, but the fact is we should look at, I think as you just alluded to, Michelle, the fact that we have the staff that can use this stuff and the fact that they know how to use it, and we're not going out hiring people on the outside to pay them to bring in their equipment to do this, and that we're overall able to maintain a lot of our infrastructure due to the investment we've made in this equipment and in the training of our staff, so.
Exactly.
Other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'll just comment. I also think it's a lot easier on the roadway than those big claw trucks that are the alternative for picking up leaves and brush. So I think it's good technology.
Yep. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All righty. 22-370, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing the purchase of flooring at the Princeton Police Department firing range classroom at a not-to-exceed cost of $11,242.67 using state contract 23-food-18184. Is there a motion? Thank you, Michelle. Layton's got the second. Questions or comments on the resolution? Eve?
When we were talking about the environmental cleanup at River Road, and the police firing range came up. I'm sure that this has been vetted in terms of any potential. We're not like putting something down that might have to be dug up to do further cleanup. Has anyone just had that thought and run that by the environmental engineers? Am I misspeaking?
Well, I thought, that was my first thought too, but this is a classroom. It's not the actual firing range. It's a classroom associated with the firing range.
Never mind.
Okay. Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 23-371, resolution of the mayor, council of Princeton authorizing participation in the New Jersey Cooperative Purchasing Alliance with County of Bergen. Is there a motion? Thank you, Michelle. Mia's got the second. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
22-372, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing use of competitive contracting to procure contract for 911 emergency dispatch services. Is there a motion? Ms. Leticia and David, I think, had the second. Questions or comments on the motion? David?
Yeah, I'll just comment that this is something that we looked at carefully, whether we wanted to change the way we deal with dispatch, and ultimately decided to put it out to bid again for an outside contractor. So,
yeah, this just allows us to actually go out to bid. So this RFP is still being worked on. Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
22-373, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton approving settlement agreement and general release for Maya Davis. Is there, Leticia, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Layton. Questions or comments on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Okay, there's three items on the consent agenda. If no one sees a need to pull any of those off, could someone move the consent agenda? Leticia, thank you. Eve's got the second. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, David?
I move we adjourn. There's hardly anyone in the room.
Here we go. Is there a second? Thank you, Eve. All in favor, say aye.
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 The meeting is over. Thank you very much. All right, almost made 9. That was my goal.